save it.
Okay. Now, will that save it? Do I have to do anything else at the end?
So at this point, you are now the host, and it will save it. So whenever you log out, it will stop the recording.
Okay.
Greetings.
I done. And then, okay, so it'll be on the cloud. Now, how does it get transferred to the website?
And then from there, I'll be able to access the recording once.
Okay, so
tomorrow or whenever.
I'm the host for right now, and then when I log out, it'll stop recording and go to the cloud, right?
Correct.
Okay, that's what I need to know.
You guys are good to go.
Okay.
Hey, John,
See you later, Doug. You can't join us today. Is that correct?
my hello from here. We just stopped by the library. They've got a program, and he has a couple free books he just got for being a avid reader. He's been reading a series called The Magic Treehouse books.
Wow.
Like a second grade. He's 4 years old, so I don't know what that means, but it's
My
hard to keep up.
loved that series.
Yeah, he's fallen in love with it.
Times.
Well, y'all have fun.
Yeah.
Hey, so Doug, it is technically recording right now, right?
Correct.
Okay, I want to be sure. Okay, thank you.
All right. Guys.
See you next time.
Good one.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Marco. Good morning, John.
So, how is everybody?
Oh, I've had my cup of coffee and I've done my walk, and it's a nice brisk day. So I'm doing good.
Good. Marco, I loved your essay about your dog.
Oh. Yeah, it was just something I wanted to offer into the space before we started. I don't know if that we need to talk about that or that's the most salient thing, but it was something that distinctly occurred to me over the weekend, related maybe to this upcoming talk that I have.
It was a beautiful essay. I like what you shared, Marco.
Oh, thank you.
Actually, I would like to work with you.
Okay. I would like to. I will just to say up front that I'm a little stressed, but not too bad. But I have a client meeting coming up this afternoon. A project that I've had to work on and research and put together a plan, and I've been avoiding it and resisting it and not necessarily putting it off, because I did do some work last week and I've been prepared, but it's sort of crunch time for that upcoming meeting, and so I was up a bit late working on it, and also this morning, and I have a little bit left to do before the event occurs, so I want to give myself the time to do that. So I think I'd like to not go much past an hour.
Okay.
Then let's do that.
Yeah, that's fine. No problem.
Okay. Then that's I think let me just talk very briefly. I'll get to the point here about tacit knowing. We're talking about modeling and becoming more skilled social dreamers, and how to pay attention. What are you paying attention to? Exploring resources and looking for patterns and meta patterns and levels. So I just posted a little bit just recently about levels, and I'm using Bateson's model. His logical levels was adapted by Robert Dilts, and he added neurology to those levels. And I'm not going to go into any details because it's way too complex for the brief time we have today. But I wanted to give each of you a little bit of background here so that you could follow better this process that we're getting ready to do with Marco because I wanted to explore writing. When he's writing a poem, how he considers his audience or his reader. And we're using the clean as the technique, the modeling technique. And I'm going to be asking questions, clean questions. It's an interview. So the purpose is not to develop resources for Marco. This is about his personal development. Although I'm sure that will happen as we ask these questions, pretty inevitable. But we're looking for patterns that we can then use to create a template so that we can transfer what other skills, abilities, learnings that are unique to Marco, but that can be shared with others. So that's the intention behind clean interviewing. And this has been used a lot in qualitative research. And James Lawley, my mentor, has contributed to a book on this topic, because a lot of qualitative research has been debunked, really, because the researcher goes in with loaded questions, basically designs the question to get the response that they want. And so so the benefit of using clean language is it tends to bypass the researcher's biases and prejudices and preferences. And we could imagine what it would be like if lawyers and doctors and people in the helping professions could, prevent contaminating or detectives, contaminating evidence, or asking leading questions that demand a certain kind of answer. So our research would get cleaner, and our politics and our teaching and just about everything we do in public discourse would get more refined and skilled, I think. So that's my intention in bringing this forward, and how much I've enjoyed working with the groups that I've worked with here at Cosmos, because I can see that all of us have started out at a pretty mature level and are getting even more so. So anyway, that's my intention here. And just to go over these, what I mean by looking for patterns, meta patterns. It's a little tricky. And because there were so many patterns that might pop up at any given occasion in anyone's communication. What I'm looking at here is the logical levels that comes from Gregory Bateson's work, working with dolphins, actually. He was looking at, I'm not going to go into that because it's too complex, but basically he's talking about environment, behavior. Environment is shared, right? Behavior, capabilities in that, with those behaviors in that environment. Above capabilities are values and beliefs. Above values and beliefs are identity. And above that is mission. And vision is above mission. So this is all arranged in a hierarchy. And so you can pay attention to what level a person is at. For example, if someone says, I have a drinking problem, that's a behavior. I am an alcoholic. That's a statement of identity. So if you were intervening, hopefully to help such a person, you would know what level they are articulating their issue at. So you deal differently. A drinking problem is something different from I am an alcoholic. Mm-hmm. And usually to deal with an alcoholic, that's a very high level. That's in their identity. To work with that, you have to go to a higher level than the level that they're at. So if they say, I am an alcoholic, you have to go to spirit. You have to go to vision before you're going to have any influence on I am an alcoholic. someone says an alcoholic, I'm an alcoholic, and say, well, maybe you just need to think about cut back on your beers, how many beers you have every night. That's going to be of no help whatsoever. But if someone is saying, I just drink too much, you might say to them, well, that's a behavior. They're talking about a behavior, and well, can you cut back a little bit on your drinking? Or can you decide what environment? Maybe you shouldn't go out to that bar with that group of people if you drink too much at that bar with those group of people. So that might be a legitimate kind of way of framing a communication to somebody who presents that as a problem. Mm-hmm. So I'm just letting you know how these levels are, in everyday conversation, you can tell just from a person's language where they're coming from. Mm-hmm. And I believe this is, and of course, you can look at spiral dynamics, you can look at levels and lines and all those quadrants. Even though there are all kinds of both, there are different kinds of levels. What's included and what's excluded, what's transcended, what's above, what's below, what's higher, what's lower, up, down. These are, when you hear that language, you know right away that a person is working with a hierarchy. Mm-hmm. And it may not be explicit. It could be an implied hierarchy. So this is all, very fascinating to play around with. And at any rate, I think as just an exercise, I would like to draw upon your description and your interpretation of your relationship with your animal companion, and maybe you could we could do this together, and then I can ask a question, you can ask a question, and we're going to go up that hierarchy. Do you have that in front of you?
I could pull it up.
No, Michael. I'm sorry, Michael. Do you have that in front of you? Can you unmute?
What he wrote?
Could you? I think I posted the logical levels.
Oh, I wrote those down. I did write those down.
So you have that environment?
Yes.
Okay. So if we just start with environment, we could go up that hierarchy. Okay?
Right.
And use, I would propose that we use Marco's relationship. When relating, and your dog's name again is Mooby?
Mooby, yeah.
Mooby. Mm-hmm. And when relating to Mooby at your best, where are you? What's your environment? That's about
outside running.
Outside running.
Mm-hmm.
So Michael.
Yes.
Could you include outside running and then move to behavior? Ask him. Well, he's already told you. So he's already given you a behavior.
Yeah.
Actually. So what if you go to abilities?
Okay, so
and outside and running.
And when outside and running with Mooby with a B. Mooby. Okay.
Mooby.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. When outside and running with Mooby, whereabouts are you? Whereabouts are you in your own relationship with Mooby?
Can I intervene?
Yeah. Go ahead, John. Go ahead.
My apologies. I may not have been very clear. I wanted to use not clean language.
Oh.
But just use this. Where am I, or where is he?
Uh-huh.
What is he doing? What skills does he have?
Oh, so the one. So I would. What is he doing? Well, he's that is that capacity. What he's doing. That's a capacity one, right?
Yeah. Well, he already gave you the environment. He's outside.
And the behavior.
The running would be the behavior, right?
Yeah. And so the next one is capabilities, right? And skills.
So what skills do you have when running outside with Mubi?
Yeah. So Marco, and went outside with Mubi. Thank you for your patience, both of you. Outside with Mubi. What skills do you have?
Not many in that particular scenario, because what I'm imagining, or what flashed into my mind when the first question was asked, when I'm at my best relating with Mubi, uh, I I thought of the different kinds of circumstances that we're in. Sometimes we're inside the house, sometimes we're in the yard, sometimes we're just in the same space, but we're not interacting at all. Or we have certain kinds of rituals that we go through, like a feeding ritual. Uh, at different times, although I haven't done this in a while, I would brush her teeth. So that was a kind of ritual. When she was younger and we had another dog, we played and with dog toys and things like that. But where I feel we've been at our best is when we're outside running. And I used to go for jogs, and she would accompany me. And we'd go around maybe 3 miles. She could keep going. I called her my personal trainer, because she really, if we got into sync, we would be going about the same pace, and she'd be kind of next to me or a little bit ahead of me. And it would often be a sunny day, and on a day like today would be perfect. It would be sunny and cool, and we could have a really invigorating run. And she'd be tired at the end of it, and could eat and could lay down on the couch for the rest of the day. And I would be, of course, energized by the run. So that's what I was feeling, and those for me have been the best times with Mubi. But then, of course, there are other situations like the way she cuddles up and so forth. But those are a bit easier, and this is a bit more of the fullness of our co-being when we're out together.
Okay, that was a lot of information, Michael. And
Yeah, it was.
Because we don't have much time, I'm just going to streamline this.
Okay.
This is getting at the level of capabilities: brush your teeth, play, cuddle. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, and when outside running, or brushing teeth, playing, cuddling, what is important to you, Marco?
I think of fluidity of motion, the ability to move through the steps of the ritual, whatever it is, and have a synchronous sort of communication between us, so that we follow we perform it well in a way, and we each do our part. So that's, I think, what's important there.
And synchronous communication, and we do our part. And Michael, would you like to do the next one, identity?
Yeah, identity. Yeah.
And just to backtrack.
Yeah.
And when synchronous communication, and brush teeth and play and cuddle, and synchronous communication. Go for it, Mike.
Okay. And when you and Moby are outside running, and there is a fluidity of motion, of ritual, who are you? Is that good, John? Is that good, John?
Okay, so that goes up to the identity level. From
Yeah, right.
Environments, I see. I'm tempted to wax poetic.
You're free. You're free to do whatever you want to do. Michael and I are looking for structure. You can do whatever you want.
Okay. Well, I want to say that I'm the sun, I'm the wind, I'm the grass under our feet or our paws. Uh, I'm also the leash, the actual connection point. What I really enjoy is when we've had the opportunity, because just we're in a dog park or something like that to run free, but because of Mubi's aggression toward other dogs, people to really enjoy those kinds of scenarios as much. But I'm everything that is being experienced and sensed and perceived when running free with Mubi.
And sun and wind, and running with Mubi. And what are you a part of? Wind, sun, and wind, and running with Mubi. Synchronous communication.
Yeah, I'm part of an ecstasy.
Ah.
An ecstasy of experience, an ecstasy of communion, of joy. But it's a sort of, I want to say it's a wordless joy. I'm giving words to it now, but in the moment I'm not necessarily doing so.
And that's wordless joy and ecstasy is like what?
It's a whoosh. It's a whoosh.
A whoosh.
Yes. It's a whoosh of. It's a whoosh of breath. A whoosh of breath. A whoosh of life. I'm making this motion with my hands because there's the flow of experience. That's. And I think also there's the full use of our bodies too. Like we're running, my heart's beating, my blood is pulsating through my veins, my legs are moving. I may be feeling aches and pains and little things like that, but it's part of an ensemble of motion that includes Mubi because we're also pacing each other. So I think I may pay more attention to her than she does to me when we're outside. And that's one of the dialectics of our relationship is that she goes into another mode. And I'm more of a caretaker in a sense. I have to make sure she doesn't get run over by a car or something like that. But she's really, looking for other animals. She's smelling everything. She's very close to the ground. And I'm probably giving more information than you can digest, but at the moment, but there's a lot going on, I guess, and just talking about it is bringing it to mind.
I picked up on another pattern. He was at ecstasy and wordless joy and whoosh and flow. And then he went back down to identity and he said, I'm a caretaker. I am. That lets you know this is something high level. And I think that you also notice how nonlinear it is.
Yeah, yes.
And that's fine. But it's our job as modelers is he can go wherever he wants to with the question. And he can add something to it, take something away from it, move to a lower level, move to a higher level. But your job is just to basically track what level. Is this a behavior? Is this an environment, behavior, beliefs and values, identity, mission, spirit? And it's as you notice, there's a ambiguity. Is this a behavior, or is it a capability, or a little of both, or neither? What's going on here? Same thing with identity and spirit. When we get to those higher levels, Dilt says those higher neurological levels, because metaphor is where people go. It's very hard to talk about identity and mission and vision without using some kind of metaphor. And those metaphors may change. So anyway, that's a little exercise just to give you a taste of this process we're engaged in when we're doing modeling. And modeling for what kind of purpose, that can change a lot too. Because we can model for, you know, self-modeling. I'm doing something well that I'd like to learn more about, or I'm in a confused state and I don't know what to do. Okay, well, we can model that. What would you like to have happen? And then you can go from there. Or I'm in a real stuck state. Is there anything else about that stuck state? You make a choice as a modeler. Do you want to go with a well-desired outcome or a whatever that is? Or is this person not going to go that way because they're really invested in this stuck state? So it's always model something nice rather than nasty. But if the person will not let you do that, then you have to go where, you know, wherever they're going, and you're just there to find structure. That's one kind of modeling. And I love doing that, especially in groups, because I think it's very helpful for other people to learn about the internal process of another person that they may think they know very well.
Mm-hmm.
And when I've modeled friends that I've known very well, I don't know them at all. They're telling me things I had no idea.
Right. So
it's very humbling, this modeling business. It makes you say, oh, damn, I thought I knew everything. And I realized I'm totally ignorant about this person in many, many ways. And as each of us knows, you know, sometimes we know other people just don't get us. And it's not their fault. It may not be our fault either.
Yeah.
We don't find the right words. We can't stay in rapport for whatever reason. But then we have high levels of rapport with some people. And we know that other aspects of our nature can come forward, that can't come forward in other contexts. So I find when we model as a group, this is a extremely vital practice for me, because I think it has some benefits for going forward into a more ecological planetary future. The more of us we're sensitive. I noticed, this is a reflection on our group yesterday. This is something that I noticed that I think I was presenting that model that Catherine Hales put forward and talking about that pyramid she uses. You know, she's using a different kind of model though. This is a conceptual model where she's talking about material process. It's on the bottom, and the between is that non-cognitive consciousness. And then there's on the top modes of awareness, conscious and unconscious. And you know, there was a robust response from Ed, and a negative one. And I realized this is that there's a value there, that he really, something that he values has been violated. And rather than get paranoid about my own presentation, which I started to do, I just realized, wait, it has nothing to do with the presentation. It was good enough, maybe not great, but it was good enough. But there was a value that was violated. And he later proceeded to talk about feeling, how it's all mental, there's no feeling it. And I realized that's a value that he's bringing forward that's important to him. So that's just an example of how I'm learning more about Ed and about our group and what the group needs. And, you know, rather than me trying to prescribe what the group needs, I just need to be more attentive at what people are paying attention to already. So that's what I meant by doing this little exercise, and the tacit knowing people have skills and abilities and missions and purposes. And most of it is out of their awareness, unless you sort of ask clean questions, hopefully, that then can elicit high quality information, rather than, as we do in conversation, oh, you're really good at this. You know what? This reminds me of someone else who's good at this, and that's reminds me of someone else who's good at this. Someone has a great theory about people who are good at this. Meanwhile, I've got no information from this person at all. I've just given him a whole, you know, my whole worldview. Yeah. So this is the challenge, guys. Thank you.
John, Thank you. I just want to say that for me, you're a good example of being a modeler to me, to help me. and your honesty and reflections really helped me, because to me, this is about, in a big metaphor, about participation. How do we participate? How do we co-participate? And what I've experienced is increasing my level in certain ways, of just like you reflected, of how a big thing for me that I know that if I'm not being skillful is I can be aware inside myself of a defensive form of listening rather than, and so listening becomes very, that's my go-to as far as checking where am I in the participation, whether it's on this, with us right now, or if I'm, talking to my son, or, talking to somebody else, because this ongoing alternate realities that we've gone through for 8 sessions, believe it or not, I just want to give you a lot of support, has helped me actually, in not just on the screen, but face to face, slow down, Mike, listen carefully. I may not ask, I may not ask prescribed clean language questions, but I try to be careful with and show intrigue and question.
That's right.
Rather than just assume, or even if I assume, I'm going to ask a question to see, well, is that right? Because I know that my assumption sometimes is just, it comes up because I'm trying to orientate. Where the fuck are you? I don't know where you're at.
That's right. That's right.
And so I try to keep in mind being aware of assumptions as orientations, not as set in stone, if that makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense. And I think something that you're suggesting is something that Caitlin Walker says, who's one of the best trainers in clean language. She says she works with a lot of high-level executives who are highly resourced, but are having problems. And she's basically, it's turning contempt into curiosity.
Yes, yeah.
That's what she's trying to do.
Yeah.
Because when you start with the language of contempt, you are lost.
Yes.
If you come with contempt, they're going to listen to you, and you're not going to listen to them. So I think that's the big challenge as the drama circle. Because if you listen for when the drama circle gets triggered, there's often either someone takes something as contemptuous of them, or they have said something contemptuous.
Yes, right, right.
I've done both.
Right.
I can do both.
Right.
And I've been a victim, I've been a persecutor, and I've rescued lots of people.
Yeah.
So they're human foibles, and they're actually can be extremely creative.
Exactly. And so for me, it's about creating a base of resilience, of not, for me, not being obsessive, trying to do it in a perfect way, but how can I jump back on track? I imagine myself, I used to jog a lot out in the woods, and I'd purposely get lost, run in the woods and get lost to see if I can find my way back. And that's kind of what I'm saying is, okay, I get lost, I can get off track. But do I have the resources, I guess, from your language, to come back on, even after I've been through this feeling of being lost or noticing contemptuousness from either myself or somebody else?
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Marco, would you like to share something? Any reflections? I'd love to hear.
Well, I'd like to ask a question about environment, because one of the things, Michael, you said is that when you get lost in a conversation, you ask where are we? What's going? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you talked about going out in the woods and getting lost purposefully in the woods and trying to find your way back.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the themes John brought up yesterday, had to do with shared, like the fact that we're all in we're all in different places, right?
Right.
And you also talked about sensing into your environment, your local environment,
right,
when you come into these virtual spaces.
Uh-huh.
So I'm wondering about environments and how our local environments differ from our virtual environment, but also how we would, if it were possible, synchronize our virtual environments in a way. Like, how would we have a common environment to locate ourselves in this virtual space? I mean, is that just the screen? Is it just, these boxes? or
Okay.
what would constitute that environment?
Okay, so I hope I do this well because that's a very, you articulated something that I haven't been very well articulated. If you notice, in my response is being aware of the physical dislocation, okay, and me working with my own personal energy in my body, in my environment. But I also added that in terms of emotionally, that doesn't have to be disassociated when I'm engaging with youth across the screen. Because I think it's about once we've grounded in our body and know the energy of our own environment inside and out, then actually we don't get trapped in the sense of distance. And there's an inner, and then this is where for me, energetically, I don't have to be confined to the fact that you're in Colorado when I communicate to you, because the energy is coming from a relaxed, open receptivity to the emotion or energy that comes across the screen. Yes, we're in a different location. If I was in the same room, I would adapt differently. But my critique is I've been in the direct presence of people and felt like they're not even here. They're gone. And me too, so that disconnect happens whether you're in the presence, it seems to me, than this. But this technology is making it very obvious how that activity happens within ourselves. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask something?
Yeah.
That was great. I'm gonna sort of fast forward something that we're going to do later in this process. But I want to ask you, Marco. You asked about what the relationship between the virtual and the physical, the common environment, and you asked Michael. Michael talked about his personal energy, about disconnect and dissociation and grounding in the body. So he talked about a lot that he valued in communication with others. So, Marco, what's happening for you so far? In this communication with Michael?
Yeah, I'm noticing the feeling of inside the body, kind of chest area, head chest area. Hard to describe this exactly, but if you were to imagine a sort of 3D video game kind of like lit up grid that we're going out. But that's it, almost like a virtual reality. Imagine that I was in a virtual reality. I'm not wearing goggles though, but if I were having that sort of sense of being immersed in in an environment, in a digital environment, that's how I was starting to feel. But it felt a little bit like my body was, I don't know, making some inroads or some kind of incursion into that hyperspace, if you will.
and your body, or my body, in a hyperspace, incursion into hyperspace,
Mm-hmm.
and being immersed in the digital, in a 3D video game, a virtual reality, noticing a feeling inside body, head, heart, chest area. And okay, I think that's enough. But we're all obviously detecting patterns. And which patterns with each person in each moment is going to vary considerably, depending upon what we want to have happen. Also, if we're in a conversational, shooting the breeze kind of mood, or do we have a pressing problem that our community needs to address? Or do we have to organize our behavior to make something happen. So these are all and what makes us motivates us to do that, whether it's a reading group or a political agenda or something emotional, psychological. Yeah.
Making love.
Right.
Making love.
Right. That's sort of hard to do. I understand some people find it more satisfying than the physical. So I find
Yeah,
that
well,
very.
I didn't mean to, I'm sorry to interrupt you, John. I didn't mean in terms of digital. I meant just physical. It's hard to make love and communicate.
Yeah, I have a research question, and actually, this is not probably for this particular session, but for some future one. I was listening to a discussion, and I heard a man who was born in the 90s talking about people who were born in the 60s and how they viewed politics. And he noticed this in the office where he worked. And he worked in some political organization that older people tended to value physical spaces like the square, the park, wherever the demonstration is going to happen. And that important things happen in face-to-face physical space. Whereas he said people who, like himself, were born in the 90s,
yeah,
the digital spaces were more compelling.
Yeah.
And I, as a person who was raised in the 60s, that resonated with me. And as a big research question, how could some sort of qualitative research could emerge at the generational differences, if there are any. This may be just something that it was particular to his office where he worked. But I think that since many of our interests are in media studies and how to use this technology, I think this is something that just raised a red flag, something I needed to pay attention to. Because I have friends who are, millennials, and I am noticing very big differences in my responses to what I'm seeing, hearing, feeling. Because I'm feeling sometimes very highly evolved young people, extremely intelligent. I feel like there's something there that I don't have. And there's also something I have that they don't have. And I don't think it has something to do with age as much as it does, although that could be something about it, and coming from different backgrounds and noticing different historical occurrences. But there's something also about how we're organizing our behavior around this technology. Mm-hmm. I'm learning. I'm learning how to get robust and interesting and resilient kind of communications in a non-physical community. It took me forever to get to that point. I found it so depressing communicating in these forms compared to the richness of the analogical communications that, the gesture, the tone of voice, the look in a person's eye, how the whole group could be mobilized in ways by someone's touching some resonant shared belief, and everybody would light up, that's a different, or a performance on stage, right. Which I go to a performance on stage, most of these actors, it looks like I'm watching TV. They're TV actors. They don't know what to do on stage. They don't know how to, they have no presence. They're like this, So I'm just sharing this because I think our technologies change and we who work in the humanities, who are working with the imagination, how are we going to, what are the stories, the narratives, who is it? Who is our audience? What is our relationship to that audience? So this is my segue into what I'd like to do today. Actually, we only have 15 minutes, so maybe you can come back again some other time, Marco, on another occasion. But we can get started today, if that would be okay with you.
Yeah, and I don't have a hard stop. I just want to, I'm afraid if I go 2 hours,
right.
that I'll be a bit too exhausted to focus on this next project. But if
This,
we go a little over, that's okay. That's a very interesting question that you just raised, and
yeah,
talk about it.
and this is the motivation I had for setting this up, and hopefully the question will attract certain kinds of high quality information, and Michael and I will be monitoring one another. So Michael, I will start with this, and if you would be so kind as to be my coach, so you're keeping track. What were the questions I just asked Marco? I would like you to ask me, what's happening for you so far?
What's happening so far for yourself?
Yeah, when I ask for a meta perspective,
Okay.
you're the guy who's tracking me. I'm tracking
Yes.
Marco, you're tracking me, and I would just like you to hold that frame, that meta frame. What's happening for John so far in this
Okay.
interview? And what lets him know what's going on with Marco? And what is John seeing, hearing, knowing? Those are the kind of questions. I'm talking in third person here.
Yeah.
I know you can change the question to keep the logic going, so that you would, when you're addressing me, you would be asking me about my logic here, or what I see here, no. And that's just a framework for you to work with. Of course, you can come up with, I'm going to ask you to translate that into something that's a clean question as much as possible. And this is my challenge, is to get clean questions with Marco, rather than impose a loaded question, which I already know the answer to, which is what most researchers do. It's like, oh, this is what I want to know. This is how I'm going to ask it. I ask it, and they tell me exactly what I already know. And say, yeah, I'm really good at this.
Right.
Which is, if you notice, that's exactly what our media does to our politicians, and why politicians can just say anything they want to.
Exactly.
And,
John, what was the third question you said for me to keep a track of?
if you just consider my behavior, what is, like, you're watching this exchange between these two persons, and there's an interviewer and there's an interviewee. What is the interviewer? What are the kind of questions he's asking? What is he seeing, hearing, knowing? What are the assumptions that he's making? And those are that's the kind of, and what assumptions do you have? You have assumptions too. So you're just like holding all of that, and then come up with a clean question.
Okay.
Is there anything else about this? Is there anything else about that? What kind of is that? What happens right before? What happens after? I would work with the developing questions before you got into anything like relationships or intention. But if you feel comfortable, just pick and choose whatever question that you feel would be useful. I hope that's.
And I just, for my own need,
Yeah.
I appreciate your patience with me.
Oh. I appreciate your patience with me. I know I get a little long-winded, according to Ed. So no, Ed didn't say that. Who said that about me? It was Mark. Mark said I was long-winded. So of course he should talk, But anyway, just to let you guys know, if you need to pause it for any reason, just hold up a hand. Okay. Okay. So my plan is to do about 10 minutes with Marco interviewing, and then maybe Michael will pause, and you could interview me.
Okay.
So you notice this, there are levels in this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right.
And different perspectives. So Marco, are you ready to go? When you are writing a poem, how do you consider your audience or your reader?
I hear them, I would say.
and I hear them, I would say. And when I hear them, whereabouts hear them?
It's a loop of exchange, energy exchange. There's a sound, feeling, and there's information
And
moving through the loop.
And sound and feeling moving through the loop and energy exchange. And whereabouts is that loop?
It's a body loop. So
A body loop.
head, chakras, space.
Head, chakras, space, and the body loop. And does that body loop have a size or a shape?
It depends on the poem. It could be intimate and folded, cuddly, warm, dark. It could be expansive, bright. These are different possibilities, right? That the poem or the poetics evoke.
And it depends on the poem. An intimate, warm, dark, expressive, bright. And then what happens to body loop?
It's activated. There's a flow. I'm recognizing my own pattern of using that word, but it is a felt, full body, ecstatic experience, and I know when a poem works because I can feel that within myself, and I can also, in a sense, feel the audience's reception of it. I can feel that if I perform it, but I also can virtually feel it before I perform it as I'm composing it. And that sort of virtualization of the audience is one of the components or the dynamics of the writing process, I would say.
And the flow, and you recognize your own pattern, and felt, full body, ecstatic, feel in myself, feel audiences, recognition virtually, and dynamic, and feel audiences. And when feel audiences, whereabouts feel when feel audiences?
It's in the body, but the body is expanded. It's not exactly the right word, but it's a virtual body, I want to say. That may be an analog for a subtle body, but there is a sense, I'd say, of subtle body communion or communication, and that doesn't that doesn't just reside in the physical. It has a transphysical, but doesn't exclude the physical either. It's a physical sensation, but it's a rather liberating physical sensation, because it's there's a there's a loosening of contraction, and I often discover that contractions have information in them. They have either some contradiction that I'm integrating, or some fear that I'm dissolving. And so the writing works often with those tensions and those intensities. It requires them, and they're almost like fuel pellets. However, they can be very deep and powerful. So it's it's not it's not easy, let's say, to go through those processes, and I don't always really go there, and I have to modulate that kind of work, that kind of encounter, with the other modes of life that I participate in, as an economic being who has to make money, like my engagement today, or a family person, or a citizen who has to pay his taxes and so forth. All of those have to somehow allow for that deeper and more intense engagement, because that to me is where the magic comes from, is through the working with intensities.
Working with intensities, where the magic comes from, and deep and powerful, and fuel pellets. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Fuel pellets, and tensions and intensities and contractions and fear dissolving and loosening contractions and liberating the transphysical, and communication between virtual body and subtle body. And when virtual body and subtle body, what determines virtual body or subtle body?
Determines. What if I may turn the tables on the questioner? When when determines? What is determines?
We have a meta question. So what happens when the interviewer and the interviewee trade places? I am pointing that out. And determine what determines virtual body or subtle body. And as an interviewer who wants to maintain clean, I'm using Marcos language. And that's why I do not want, this is my value here, to devolve into a conversation. Because then the purpose of this exchange will vanish. Because I can talk about my model, the subtle body, and what determines the virtual and the subtle. But I don't think that this would be for the purpose of this interview. So, but that, I'm not saying that's not a relevant question, but you're going meta to the interview. And you're certainly entitled to do that. I wonder if there's a relationship between your going meta in this interview and the subtle body and the virtual body.
There may be. I don't know. The word determines threw me a bit because I didn't. Well, I wondered what would determines mean. What would that mean?
Well,
Determine the subtle body, or to determine the not necessarily what you mean. Maybe that's where uh, we don't have to go in a clean language interview. But
well, in the body, returning back to your language, in the body, and the body is expanded. And virtual body, or a subtle body, communication, and liberating, transphysical, and loosening, contraction. And contraction has info that is important. And tensions and intensities. And fuel pellets, and deep and powerful. And magic comes from that. And with all of that, what happens to field audiences?
audiences are within myself. I feel them within myself. And they have existence, which is both subjective and objective at the same time.
And they have an existence that's subjective and objective at the same time. And audiences are in myself. And is there anything else about that self when audiences are in myself?
That self is a soul self.
Soul self. Is this a good place to pause?
Sure.
Thank you. So I need my assistant director.
Just a minute. I'm formulating the question. Thank you.
Marco, could you hold on? It's 1:04. Can you hold on for maybe 10 more minutes? Or do you have to run? Okay.
I'm good. Mm-hmm.
I just want to respect your time frame here.
Okay.
Because we're just getting started, but maybe we can continue at another time.
Okay.
Because there were a lot more questions I wanted to ask.
Okay.
So I'm gonna jump in the deep end of the pool.
Please. So you're looking at my process, okay? And Marco,
Yeah.
of course, he can continue. Marco, you can continue to be immersed in your landscape, which is fine, and you can hear the questions that Michael asks of me, and it's okay. I'm just like being. I want to transition from one kind of experience to another kind of experience, and being able to hold all of it,
Mm-hmm.
and a good container. So thank you, Michael.
So I'm gonna ask, and when interviewing Marco, is there anything else?
Is there anything else? Yes. I'm leaping ahead, but I'm holding in my map, in my model. I've asked him about a poem. When he's writing a poem, how he considers his audience or his reader. also part of the inquiry is around prose. I also want to ask in another interview, when writing prose, what is your relationship? How do you consider your reader or your audience? Because it's the prose poem dynamic, which I believe is worth modeling. And if I could get enough competent writers who do both and model them, we would have some actual experiences with, I believe, more interesting patterns could start emerging than what I got in my English class, which is basically just some expert figured this out and you just have to memorize it. So that's I'm holding all of that. And I also know that, I have a cluster of questions, and it's not going to be in any one question, but it's going to be in the cluster of questions that the high quality information will become more transparent. And then I can then streamline it, find out what's idiosyncratic, and find out how can I put this on? How can I do this? So I'm using myself as, do I know how he does this? If I know how he does this, then I can do it. So it's an acting job. So we're taking on we're creating a template so we can act it out ourselves.
Okay.
So I hope that some of that registers.
Yeah, I'm going to give it another shot. And when leaping ahead, holding how he considers, and it's the poem prose dynamic. And when listening to all that, what lets John know what's happening with Marco?
Yeah. It gets a little murky when he goes meta, when he goes to a meta level. And I believe there's information in that meta level questioning, and I can go that way. And I think I did. And I think there was a word that he determines, what determines. And that's a specialty question. So in clean language, there's the basic, I think there are 9 basic questions, but there are also about 20 specialty questions. And you only use them for certain instances, such as, I get this sad feeling in my heart. And then later, I get this glad feeling in my heart. So when you get a sad feeling in your heart, and you get a glad feeling in your heart, what determines glad from sad? And that's a reason that, you want to, okay, they're giving you a location for these 2 different states. Same location, different states, which determines one state from the other state in this location. Rather than just saying, oh yeah, I know what you mean. I got it. This is the really kind of nitpicky, this is when I know this is his stuff rather than my stuff. Can I make sense? But he's saying, sure, but that's not the point of this. It's sort of like, okay, how is he doing this? Do I know how he's doing this? Do I know in this, admittedly, this is an area of ambiguity for him. He's let us know, the virtual body and the subtle body, there's an ambiguity there. So I was sort of wanting to explore that ambiguity with obvious mixed results. I may have asked, I'm looking at, well, maybe I could have asked a different question. Like I could have and a subtle body. What kind of subtle body? Where is that subtle body? And a virtual body. Where's that virtual body? Does it have a size or a shape? And then I could contrast and compare the subtle and And then I could have maybe asked, well, which terms? Because I think it may have been, the determination question may have been too quick. Maybe more information was required before he could make adequate sense of the question. Rather than challenging it, he would have had enough information in his system that he could have organized a different response. So that's a very good question for me to ponder.
Okay.
My own processes somehow.
Okay. And when listening to Marco's answers and sad, glad feeling in heart.
Oh, I made that up. He didn't say that.
Oh, okay. But
I was just talking out loud about my own process.
oh, okay.
And meta commenting on my own process. Marco, you did not say that.
No.
Yeah, he didn't say that. I said that as an example of when discriminating, when that specialty question is a good question and maybe not. Sometimes it's not a good question.
But I could tell you that it raised for me maybe more of a theoretical question, like virtual versus subtle. There's a theory of the subtle body. I don't think there's as robust a theory of the virtual body. I think that the virtual body is perhaps a figure in, in virtual reality construction, but I didn't mean it that way. I meant virtual more like subtle, but then I didn't have a clear way of determining what distinguished virtual from subtle if virtual did not mean VR, technologically projected body, if virtual was an aspect of my experience. So that's I think what happened there is that I had I felt a glitch with respect to the parsing of the language, and it's because of this background maybe question that it raised for me. So.
Great. Thank you. So I'm going meta to Michael and John. Because I think there are different levels in this discourse event. When I am able to play it back, I will be able to track something that I can't track now. Because I will see, all kinds of patterns and language and gestures that I wasn't paying attention to because I was paying attention to something else, which is exactly what you're doing when you're working with a client or an interviewee or a group. You're paying attention to what they're paying attention to, and you're paying attention to what they're not paying attention to.
Yeah.
You have to acknowledge what they're paying attention to if you want to redirect their attention to something else. But it has to be motivated by the group. If this is for the group, it's for this person, or it's for a project that we've both decided on, we've agreed to, like this modeling project this interview is for a project. So I'm holding all of that, and so when I look at the video, I'm going to notice, oh, this is what John was paying attention to in that interview with Marco, and this is what Michael was paying attention to and when he gave feedback to John. So this will be a rich kind of exploration so that I can then reflect on, oh, it went that way, but if I'd asked something else, it could have gone that way. And, just to let everybody know, I'm refining my skills here. And this is a skill building process. And I think when we get really good at this kind of stuff, alternate knowings can become more available and accessible to us rather than just become something that disappears really fast. Oh, it's right there on the tip of my tongue. Oh, I just saw it, I heard it, I felt it, but oh well, it's gone now, And I'm just wondering, how can we refine our attention so that, oh, you saw something, you heard something, you felt something, whereabouts was it? Does it have a size or a shape? Is there anything else about that? So you get the qualities, Then I believe it can get re-embodied in whichever body you're in, whether it's a virtual, subtle, or a physical.
Well,
This
also,
is, I'm sorry.
also in the process, I just want to bring forward what Marco, when we had a discussion about confidence with skill too. I think this is an element that I'm interested in, is confidence. That, because I've had experience with people that have a lot of skill, but they're fucking idiots. They're just idiots in the way they apply the skill. So when I'm talking about confidence of skill, is probably a precept, an ethical way of confidence, of having an ethical way of using my skill, if that makes sense. So this is what I just want to promote as far as building skills, is also building confidence too, I think.
That's right. The more skillful you are, the more confident you are. And the more confident you are, the more skillful you are going to become.
Yeah, it's how they intertwine. They're intertwined.
That's right. I had one person told me that I worked with, someone that I really respected, and he was coming to me as a client. So I felt, oh dear, he wants me to be his, practitioner. He wants. But afterwards, he said, you are much more competent than you are confident. And I felt that was that's a nice thing to say to someone, because I wasn't, and I sort of want to stay that way. If I have a choice between competent and confident, I would rather be confident. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of confident people out there who are not that competent, and I think you can do both.
Yeah, and that's a good point, John, because I would agree that I would agree with what you just said.
Yeah.
But there's a certain amount of confidence too that enables competence.
That's right.
That if you can be relaxed with what you're doing, if you feel like you have some, if not mastery, at least facility with your tools, then that engenders, I think, the free use of them that you wouldn't have if you don't feel confident with your tools. So they're I think they co-determine each other.
That's
right. Yeah.
And I'm really glad to see that this is actually happening here. That there's, I think these meetings, you're not just talking, you're building skills. I think that's
yes, right,
really
right.
nice.
Well, and to your point, I guess the side I've always had to work with is my confidence more than my competence. Of being able to pick up the tool and say, "Hey, you gotta use the tool to get competent, Mike." So I have to build the confidence to pick up the fucking tool.
Yeah, and we can do that.
Yeah.
I support you. And Marco, I know you have to leave.
Yeah.
Before you leave, is there something that you would like to share with us before you go? And you're welcome to return. I hope we will continue this. This is getting started. If this is useful.
Yeah. It feels a bit maybe unfinished. You've opened up some areas to explore. One of the things that you offer and that we do is give a perspective on my own process. And so I find that I do think about my process a bit, but I don't quite model it perhaps in the way that we're doing here. I have 1,000 things on my mind at any given time. So it's...
there's Moby. There's Moby.
There she is. So I think she doesn't know where the door is exactly. Anyway, I'm going to let her out in just a moment. I guess I'd like to come back. The next week is going to. I want to say that I'm going to be moving into this experience that I don't know if maybe now's not the right time to talk about it, but I'm doing a ceremony in Yahe ayahuasca ceremony on the 1st of December, and I think that next week I'm going to be fasting and really preparing for that. So taking it easy, getting a lot of rest, trying to center my prayer. Like what am I really going in there for? What do I want out of it? And it's not, it's not just want as in personal gain, but when I first did that 5 years ago, it was a profound experience, and it was the origin for me of cosmos and infinite conversations and all this. It came out of it didn't come out of the experience, but the direction or the key kind of phrase or the key code or magic, if you came out of it. And so I feel that I'm going back now after 5 years and have done a lot of work, and we've brought forth this community and these projects and this space, and what happens next, right? And how does that happen? I'm looking for guidance, I think, on that. And that maybe just even mentioning it here begins a process of articulating or discovering what that guidance might be. Because I think that's very important. Like anytime, I've only done that twice. And the first time I brought a lot of intention to it, and I got a lot out of it, like life-changing insights, or not even insights. I couldn't even describe what they are. I could, but it would take a poem or something. The second time I didn't have as much intention. I had distractions going on, and so I really didn't get a lot out of it. Not much happened. It didn't seem to change anything. But this time it feels more significant, and I also have the leeway to take some time to prepare. So I could fast next week. I could really do some preparatory work in the form of writing or meditation or time in nature, whatever is appropriate. And I guess I just want to say that that's where my attention will be, and that after that, I have an idea. I have ideas of kind of what comes next, but I think that it may be, I may come out with a great confidence in a certain way. That's one of the things that happened last time, and it was very generative. So I hope that this will build on that and maybe kick me up to another level of competence or of clarity. I don't know though, and so that's where why I'm. It's important to me to wrap up this work. It's important to me to get some things in place, like the systems work I've been doing and the Cosmos Cloud and things like that. It's all setting a stage for the next act, if you will, whatever that will be. And so that's I think what I wanted to share.
Yeah.
I'm going to just take this opportunity, John. I want to make a suggestion that maybe I need to take a break and maybe only meet once next month, and then start up with it, because the holidays and everything. I mean, I want to meet before they end, but I just, with Thanksgiving and maybe the Wednesday before Christmas or something, and just give it some space. I'm feeling the need to actually spend some time by myself to work with what I've learned in these 8-9 weeks, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we can press the pause button, because I know Thanksgiving and then Christmas is coming up, and the holidays, New Year's.
But so I would like to meet at least once in December, if possible.
Yeah. Well, we'll confer with Doug and Marcus to come and join us
after his ayahuasca event.
Yeah, Yahe.
Yahe.
The tribe. It's a Colombian tribe, and so it's the same word. And Yahe is the Spanish word, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Right, and then ayahuasca might be the Portuguese.
Okay.
But they're the same plant.
Okay.
Similar traditions.
Well, I'm just excited to get the field report from you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly how to handle that.
Write a poem.
Yeah, actually, there will be something. I have started. There will be something.
Yeah.
So
Well,
anyway,
I guess this is time to close. Is that all
Yeah.
agree?
Yeah, we can wrap it up. Unless you have a closing statement you want to make or something to clarify. I know
I
you
would.
mentioned confidence.
I just want to say that I am so grateful for all of you, and it's really moved me into a deeper coexistence of competence and confidence. So I am feeling the coexistence of both. I'm just kind of getting my sea legs under it, I guess, to put it that way.
So
Anyway,
thank
thank you
you.
guys.
Thank you
all right.
all.
Thank you. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye. Bye bye.
See you next time.
Next time. Where is it? What did I do?
You know how to do this, Michael?
I'm trying to find where to shut it off.
I'm sure Mike.
Okay, now I got it. I got it. Thank you.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you.